A little bit.
Hey, James. The class doesn't start till 9:25. I just had to open it up at 9 o'clock, so you don't have to be here if you don't want to. I just wanted until 9:25. I just want to give you a heads up.
Good morning.
Wait, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. It doesn't start for another 7 minutes, but I can only do it in 30-minute sections, so that's why it pulled up at 9. So you don't have to be here at 9, just 9:25 is fine.
What
And
if
what
we
are you
moved
guys
it?
seeing on the screen?
Flamingos.
Flamingos, fantastic. Okay, hold on.
What if we started at 9:30 instead of 9 a.m.?
I mean, technically, we could probably do that. I just didn't want to confuse anybody if they got out at 9:25 and nothing was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Let me pull up the PowerPoint. Are you seeing something other than flamingos right now?
I can see the PowerPoint.
You can see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks. Have you guys done any other Zoom meetings so far, or is this your first?
This was my first one.
Okay. Anyone else?
I had statistics yesterday.
How did it go?
Really well, actually.
Yeah? Okay.
Mhm.
Good. Are you guys seeing Canvas now, hopefully?
Yeah, mine shows Canvas.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. So if you would, if you're not already muted, just go ahead and mute yourself, please. Just go up to yourself and hit the mute button. And then if you want to talk, obviously unmute yourself. It just helps with background noise. Other thing is I have dogs and like kids and stuff here. So I'm sorry if you hear some weird stuff happening. Just try and ignore it. All right, is everybody okay so far? Like you're seeing the PowerPoint, hopefully. I don't know if you can see my face or not. Hopefully not, but if you can, sorry. But is everybody okay with this so far? Does anybody have any issues?
We're good. We can see the PowerPoint.
You can see the PowerPoint, okay, perfect. All right, so what I'm gonna do is, let me talk about the quiz first. So let me get over there. Okay, there we go. All right, so go ahead. Okay. So you do have this lockdown browser. We're not going to do the Respondus where it like videotapes your face and you need to pay $15 or whatever for that. We're not going to do that. So you do need to download the lockdown browser, and I put that link in the announcements as well as some instructions. Go ahead and try the practice quiz first, just to make sure that it's working. It doesn't count towards anything. You can go in as many times as you want. But I just wanted to make sure that you could go in and get it done. And then the Chapter 7 quiz is due by midnight tonight. You have 15 minutes to take it. So kind of make sure you're prepared. But it's going to be the same process as the practice one. So take the practice one first, and then go ahead and take your regular Chapter 7 quiz. Any questions on that?
I haven't been able to find the practice quiz.
So I think it just showed up like maybe 30 minutes ago. Can you go in now and see if you can see it?
Yes, ma'am. It just showed up.
Okay. All right, perfect. So if you do have any issues, obviously, with any of this stuff, just send me an email or a text and let me know, and we'll get it fixed. I'm not going to dock any grades because we're having technology issues or whatever. So the other thing is with homework, I extended the homework for Chapter 7 until tonight. So please get that done. If you haven't already, I think most of you already have. But again, if you have any issues, just let me know. Any other questions so far? Anything? So I think the meetings, as long as This one goes okay. I think we will continue to just kind of do this. This one should be recorded as well. So you can go back and look at it if you need to. But obviously, if you don't come to class, you can't ask questions. It's a little bit different. So I would encourage you to come. I'm gonna take attendance just like I normally do. So I guess that's all of that. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about as far as moving to online, or any questions that anybody has? Okay, are you guys ready to start chapter 8? Yes, we can do that. All right, let me go to the PowerPoint. Okay. And again, go ahead. Oh, no, it's up. Okay, go ahead and interrupt me if you have any questions, or you want to go over anything you don't get it. Okay, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay, so chapter 7, we were doing budgets. In chapter 8, what we're going to talk about is taking that budget and comparing it to what happened. We're also going to talk about a flexible budget, which means let's say that you budgeted to sell 20,000 of whatever it was. Now you are going to compare it like, well, if I sold 22,000, which is great, how do my expenses look with that? Or if I sold less, how do my expenses look? So we're going to be taking, not only comparing it to our original budget, but we're going to be comparing a per unit cost. But can you guys see me, or do you just see the screen?
We can see like the PowerPoint screen, but then also there's like a little box at the top that has you in it.
Oh, it does. You can see me. Okay.
Yeah, I got that.
All right. So a static budget is what we have been doing, or what we did in chapter 7. That's the one where we just said we anticipate selling X many. This is going to be our budget for inventory. This is our cash budget. Flexible budget is going to give us the option to say we can plug in any number of sales that we want to, and it's going to spit out what our costs should have been based on that number. So we can kind of compare what our costs budgeted at any number should be compared to what they actually were. Okay. So again, the master budget, chapter 7, is also called the static budget. Make sure you know both of those. And it's based on what we had planned, like in chapter 7. And then the flexible budget is various costs and revenues. And what we're going to look at is we're always going to have differences. So those differences, are they going to be what's called favorable, or are they going to be unfavorable? And we'll take a look at that. Okay. So we're making trophies, high quality trophies, and we plan to sell 18,000 of them. So here is our cost per unit. And then obviously our fixed cost is not going to be cost per unit because it's fixed regardless of how many we make. So it's just going to give us one bottom line number for that. So this is our budget, our static budget. And then when we're doing a flexible, we can take the per unit cost. Let me go back up for a second. Take the per unit cost and the per unit sales for each one, and then plug in just how many we're going to have. So take a look. So for example, hopefully you guys can see this, okay. This is what our planned number of units were. Well, then we're going to plug in different amounts. So in this one, we're selling 16,000, 17,000, 19,000, and 20,000. And then because we have found a per unit revenue and per unit cost for each one, we can just plug all that in, and it gives us a contribution margin, fixed costs don't change, and then our net income. So obviously the more you sell, the higher your income is going to be. But we're able to see what our net income is based on any number. So you could technically do a break even this way as well. All right, so let's talk about favorable and unfavorable. So chances are you will never be exactly with what you expected your budget to be. So sometimes it could be good, like you sell more. Sometimes it could be bad, like you sell less. But when we're talking about expenses, that's a whole different ballgame. So favorable is if you sell more, unfavorable is if you sell less than what you had budgeted. But along with that goes your expenses. So even if you sell less, well, your expenses could be far less than what you thought they would be. So that would be favorable, and the opposite could happen. So let's take a look for a second. That's pretty much what I just said. So they can, it's a really good tool to see, well, I expected my, for example, materials to be X amount per unit. When I do this flexible budget, it's much higher. So why is that? If you didn't do a flexible budget, you wouldn't know where your higher costs are coming from. It could be materials, labor, even your fixed costs could be higher than what you had thought they would be. Okay. So let's take a look at what it actually looks like here. So with your number of units, obviously you have sold 1,000 more. So without even looking down here at the costs, you know that your costs are going to be more, right? Because you sold more, you made more. So this is a little misleading perhaps, because obviously you have $1,000 more units, but your variable costs are going to be higher as well. Well, then we need to ask ourselves, okay, is that in proportion to what we thought, or is that higher than what we thought? So right here, it says unfavorable, but that could be very misleading because we have more product than we thought we would. So we increased our volume by 1,000, favorable. We do have those cost variances. At this point, we're going to consider them unfavorable, but we need to dive deeper into that. Okay. So this is how we do the flexible budget. So taking a look at this, this is what we thought would happen, the standard. This is what actually happened. So our sales price we thought would be 80. It actually is 78. So without even doing any math, you know that this is going to be an unfavorable variance because we're selling these trophies or whatever for $2 less a trophy than we thought we would. So right away, that is unfavorable. However, if you look at the variable materials cost, we thought it would cost $12 a unit. Actually only cost $11.78 a unit. So that's going to be a favorable variance. Variable labor, we thought would be $16.80. It ended up being $17.25, unfavorable. It's higher than what we thought. And the variable overhead costs, we thought would be $5.60, ended up being $5.75. So that's going to be an unfavorable variance. Okay. So now it just depends on, does it all wash out favorable or unfavorable as a whole? So in this case, they kept the number of units the same, but they plugged in those flexible versus the actual results. So in this case, because we were only able to sell them for $78 as opposed to $80, that equated to a $38,000 unfavorable variance. All they did was, however many they were selling, I think, what did we say, it was 19,000 units. So 19,000 times 78, and then, excuse me, times 80 here, and then 19,000 times the 78 that we were able to sell it for. So that equals a $38,000 difference. And then the materials, again, they plugged it in, 19,000 times, let me go back up here, 19,000 times 1178 for actual, 19,000 times 12 for the standard. So they just plugged all of those numbers in and got those favorable or unfavorable variances, and it ended up being, the bottom line was 46,720 unfavorable variance. Are there any questions on that? Everybody okay? Okay. let's talk about sales price first of all. They're just breaking that whole slide down into different pieces. So our actual sales, and there are a couple of formulas in here that you're just gonna have to get comfortable with. So when we're talking about a total sales variance, we're gonna take actual sales. So we're gonna take the actual number we sold times the actual price we sold them for. From that, we're gonna subtract what we thought it would be. So it's gonna be expected number of sales times expected sales price. And that's gonna give you a sales price variance. So what I would write down on your notes right now is sales price variance is gonna be actual sales, which is the actual number you sold times the actual price, minus expected sales, or expected number of sales times expected price. And that's going to give you your sales price variance. Each one of these formulas is going to be a little bit different. So make sure you write all of these down. Okay.
Can you repeat that?
Yes. So your sales price variance is going to be your actual sales, which is your actual number of units times your actual sales price minus what you expected. So that's going to be your expected sales price times the expected number of units. So here the number of units is different. We sold 1,000 more, but the price was $2 different. So it ended up being favorable. So by lowering the price, we're able to sell more to make up for it. Does that make sense, everybody? Everybody okay? Okay, so just make sure you write this down and memorize this little piece because there are going to be different formulas you're going to have to look at. This one, to me, is not as straightforward, but it just gives you the variance between what they thought they would have versus just the sales price difference. I would go with this one. It just makes more sense in my head. But if this one is good to you, then by all means, go ahead and do that. Okay, let's take a look at some of the problems in here so you can kind of see how it goes. Okay, so let me share this one. Okay, so can you guys all see exercise 8-2A now? Hopefully, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at favorable versus unfavorable. And we're not going to do it as a whole. Right now, we're just going to take a per unit cost. So for sales volume, we thought we were going to sell 50,000 units. We actually sold 54,000 units. That is favorable. The sales price, we thought we would sell it for $4. We actually sold it for $4.10. So we sold it for more, so that's favorable. The cost here, we thought would be $2.90. It's actually $3. So this is going to be unfavorable. When it comes to cost, if the actual is higher than the standard, it's unfavorable. Okay, so anything with cost, if it's higher than the standard, unfavorable. If it's lower than the standard, then it's going to be favorable. When you're talking about sales, price and volume, if the actual is higher, then it's going to be favorable. If it's lower, then it's going to be unfavorable. Okay. So the usage, we used less than we thought, so that's going to be favorable. Labor cost was less than we thought, so that's favorable. Labor usage was more than we thought, so that's going to be unfavorable. And then fixed cost was less, that's favorable. And then fixed cost per unit, that is lower than we thought, so that's going to be favorable. Are there any questions on that? Everybody's good? Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this. I will give you guys a minute to take a look at this, fill it out, and then I will go over it and let me know if you have any questions. So I'll give you a minute or two to go through this. You don't have to write the number, just write if it's a favorable or an unfavorable variance. Okay, so let's take a look at sales price. So we thought that we would sell whatever it was for $400 a unit. We ended up selling it for $390. So that's an unfavorable variance. But with revenue, we thought it was going to be 360,000. It ended up being 390,000. So that's a very favorable variance. Cost of goods sold is lower than what we thought it would be. So that's going to be favorable. Our material cost is higher than we thought it would be. So that's going to be unfavorable. Material usage is lower than we thought it would be. So that's favorable. Production volume. So we thought we would make 950. We actually only made 900. So that's unfavorable. Wages, and again, stop me if you have any questions. Okay, just interrupt me. Wages, we thought would be 30,000, ended up being 29,350, favorable. Labor usage, so that was higher than we thought it would be, unfavorable. Research and development, higher than we thought it would be, unfavorable. Selling and admin expenses was a lot lower than we thought it would be, so that is favorable. Any questions? Okay. All right, so let's move on. Go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so let me know if you're not seeing the PowerPoint. Okay. What I want to bring up in this sort of slide is there's always more than one reason or more than one potential reason why there could be a variance. So for example, if your total revenue is higher than what you thought it would be, it's one of two reasons. It's either because you sold them for more than you thought, or you sold more than you thought. So one is price and one is volume. And you're going to have price and volume for every single one of these variances. So for example, with labor, if your labor costs are higher than you thought they would be, it's either because you paid your people more or because they had more hours. And the same goes for materials. If your material cost is higher, it's either because you used more or you paid more per pound or per whatever it is that you happen to be doing. So there's two different variances, potential variances for each one of these that we're talking about. And this is just saying with the human element. For example, if you buy materials that are really cheap, then you might have to use more. So for example, on Amazon, I bought these really cheap iPhone chargers and they lasted like 2 weeks. So that was not a good judgment call on my part. So I paid less, but in the end, I ended up paying more because I had to like buy more or use more. So that's what this is saying here. Right. So we're going to talk about fixed cost. Typically, you wouldn't think that fixed costs would change. They shouldn't based on volume. However, stuff happens, right? So you may have to rent a new building, maybe your taxes went up, maybe your insurance went up, stuff like that. Fixed cost is pretty straightforward. So it's just going to be what you thought minus what actually happened. There's not a whole lot else that is going to happen with fixed costs because it's not volume based. So it's a lot more straightforward than some of the other stuff we're going to talk about. And this talks about like, I guess kind of who to blame if this happens. I don't know how I feel about that because it really, it depends on each company that you're with. But obviously, if fixed costs are uncontrollable, then something needs to happen. Okay. So again, what it's doing here, so your budgeted fixed cost is $291,600. It's just doing a per unit cost. So just keep in mind that it's just allocating it per unit. And then, so based on volume, if you want to do it this way, if you increased your volume, then this is what it should have been. Your fixed costs aren't going to change based on volume though. So you're always going to have, or you should always have, if I go back up here, you should always have a favorable variance if your volume is higher. So let me say that again. If your volume is higher than expected, your fixed costs should always be favorable because it's not going to change based on volume. Okay. Now, something out of the ordinary may happen, such as an increase in insurance or taxes or rent or whatever, and that may change. But if your volume is higher than expected, you should have a favorable variance. Does that make sense, everybody? Any questions? All right, so again, this is based on the total for fixed. This is based on the per unit, okay? That's all that's saying. And then they're talking about who's responsible for it. Don't worry about this. That is completely 100% dependent on where you work. Okay, so let's take a look at some other problems here. Okay, so take a look at this. I'm going to give you a minute to write this down because we're going to use this for the rest of them. So sales price is $12 a unit. There, I should write this down. So sales price is 12, and then variable is 720. Fixed manufacturing is 3,600 total, and then fixed selling and admin is 1,200 total. They plan to sell 2,000. They actually sold 2,200. Okay. So the first question was determine the sales and variable cost volume variances. So let's go back up here to number 1. So you know what you want to do is for sales, and with the formulas that we just looked at, give us the volume variance and the sales variance. So I don't think that the price changed, just the number of units changed. So what is your revenue variance going to be if you, thought you were going to sell 2,000 units and you ended up selling 2,200 units? So go ahead and calculate that first and tell me what the variance is going to be. So hopefully you got a $2,400 favorable variance for that. Let me go to Excel real fast. So your static budget had it at 2,000, and then your actual was at 2,200. And the price remained the same, it was 12. So your static budget was 24,000 for revenue. Your actual was 26,400, so you had a variance of 2,400, and it is favorable. You sold more than you thought you would. You have more revenue than you thought you would. Any questions on that? Fantastic. All right, so we classified it as favorable or unfavorable. All right, so let's skip this. So then for D, determine the amount of fixed costs that will appear in the flexible budget. So your fixed cost, is that going to change?
No.
No, should not change, right? There's no variable fixed cost. It doesn't change based on volume. So this should stay the same unless they make a note of some other fixed costs had changed. And then the next thing they want you to do is determine the fixed cost per unit based on planned and based on the fixed cost for activities. So we know right away that obviously the more you sell, the lower the cost per unit because those fixed costs are not going to change. But just for fun, go ahead and figure out the cost per unit if you sold 2,000 versus if you sold 2,200. Okay. So what I did here, so this is the variable cost per unit. And this was the fixed, which fixed was this? Fixed manufacturing. And this was fixed selling and admin. So I just calculated the variable based on how many we sold. The cost per unit didn't change, and then put in all the fixed costs. This gives me my total. And then to get a cost per unit, I just divide it by the number of units. So again, because fixed costs don't change and your volume was higher, your 2,200 is going to have a lower cost per unit. Any questions? How does everybody feel okay about this? Ish, hopefully. Okay. Okay. So let's take a look at number 5. I think this one might be a homework problem. So we have the standard price, which we just wrote down. We just used that for the last one. And then it gives us some additional information. So the actual sales price is $11.76 per unit. So it's lower than what we thought it would be. The actual variable cost is $6.90, which is lower than we thought it would be. And then it gives us a difference between actual fixed manufacturing cost and the actual selling and admin costs. So what I would do as you're going through this problem is I would set it up similar. So I would put your static budget, what you thought it would be. So you have, for example, price, volume, and then you have your variable, and then your 2 fixed. So you have your static, and then you have your flexible. And I would just punch in the numbers for each of these so you can figure out what is favorable and what is unfavorable in this case. So let's not do a number yet. Let's just say if it's favorable or unfavorable, and then we'll talk about the numbers. So go ahead and take a stab at that, and then we'll go over it. So here's your additional information. This is your flexible budget information. If you have any questions as you're going through, please speak up. All right, you guys can see the Excel spreadsheet under here, hopefully, right?
No, I don't see one.
You can't see in Excel?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. Okay. Can you see it now, hopefully?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is just our initial analysis of looking at your static versus flexible. Is everybody okay with this? Sorry, I did this before. I didn't realize you can see it. I thought you could see the whole screen, but no. Everybody okay with this? Any questions? Okay. So our next step is to figure out, okay, as a whole with sales, how did we do as in comparison with what we thought we would do? So I'm going to take basically this. So let me do the static. Well, I'll do the flexible first. Let's do the static first. So I'm going to take my static budget and then my flexible. So I don't know if you guys remember, but at the beginning I talked about, okay, if we are taking a look at a per unit cost and a per unit sales, I'm going to compare what I thought per unit versus what actually happened per unit. So this time, and I spelled static wrong, sorry. When I'm looking at my static versus flexible, I don't want to take into consideration the 2,000 I thought would be. I'm only going to take into consideration the 2,200 that I knew I sold. So it's great that we compared the volume here. That is fantastic. We had a favorable volume variance. However, that's pretty much the last time I'm going to use that 2,000. From now on, I want to see how my costs are going to compare based on the 2,200 that I actually sold. So when I'm talking about my, for example, variable cost per unit, my static was $7.20. Well, I'm going to compare that to what I actually sold. So it should have been based on 2,200, 15,840. It actually was 15,180. So I had a variance of 660, and in this case, it's favorable. It's the cost was less than what I thought it would be. So that is variable. Okay. So
you
go
did
ahead.
you did 720 times 2,200, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because what I'm trying to figure out now is, regardless of how many I sold, what should my costs have been? So I'm only going to use what I actually sold, not what I thought. The only time that you're going to use your budgeted volume, what you thought you would sell, is when you're talking about just a sales volume variance. That's the only time you're ever going to use that. Otherwise, you want to use however many you actually sold, so we can figure out what the cost should have been versus what it actually was. Does that make sense to everybody? Sure. Okay. Yeah. All right. So again, I'm taking my variable cost, what I thought it would be, times how many I actually sold, versus my variable cost per unit, what it actually was, times how many I sold. That gives me a $660 variance, and it's favorable because my cost was less than what I thought it would be. Okay, so let's now talk about, let me insert our sales. So when we're talking about sales this time, and this might get a little confusing, again, we're only going to use the 2,200. So based on the 2,200 sales price, I thought I was going to sell them for 12, and I sold 2,200. I actually sold them for 1176, and I sold 2,200. So I had a sales volume difference of $528, and in this case, it's unfavorable because I sold, the price was less than what I thought it would be. Okay, is everybody okay with that? So again, we're just taking the 2,200 that we actually sold. We're not going to use that 2,000 anymore. Okay. The answer key puts in a contribution margin, so let's do it. Okay, and my contribution margin is favorable. Okay, it's higher than what I thought it would be, so that's fantastic. All right, so then let's go into fixed manufacturing. We're not going to do the per unit, we're just going to do it as a total. I thought it would be 3,600. It is actually 3,000. So I have a $600 variance, and that is favorable, less cost than what I thought it would be. And then the next one is fixed selling and admin. I thought it was going to be 1,200. It's actually 1,230. So I have a $30 variance, which is unfavorable because it is higher than I thought. Okay. So then if I'm doing net income, I have a $702 variance, and it's favorable. I have more net income than what I thought. How does everybody feel about this?
Can you repeat one more time how you got contribution margin for each?
Oh,
Like-
sure. So let me do this for a second. So the contribution margin is just the sales minus your variable cost. Okay. So it's just sales minus variable, and it's what's left over to contribute to your fixed costs. Everybody okay with this? Do you guys need more time to write it down?
Just a little bit.
Okay. Okay, so what I want to do now is do the similar one to this, which is exercise 8-5B. So you guys can get more comfortable with this. Very similar to the last one. So let me have you write down these numbers first. So the sales price is $15 a unit. This is your static budget, 15. Variable cost is 7, fixed manufacturing, and then selling and admin. You thought you were going to sell 18,000. You actually sold 19,000. So remember, you're just going to use that at the top. And let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to change my share screen every time I switch around. Let me do this. Yeah. Can you guys see the exercise B? 8-1B, hopefully. Can I move down to the problem, or do you guys still need to write this down?
I'm still writing it down.
So, right.
Okay. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let me move down. So you had what you thought would happen. This is actually what happened. So here's your sales price, $14.75, variable costs, and then you have your fixed manufacturing and your fixed selling and admin. So go ahead and write those down just like we did in the last problem, and then I'll bring up the Excel problem so you can kind of see how it goes and follow that. All right, so here's how we set up the last one. So go ahead and set up this one just like this, and you can do the per unit first, and then go ahead and do your static and flexible after that. If you have any questions, let me know.
What was our volume again? Like last problem was 2022 What is it, this problem?
Oh, sure. So actual volume is 19,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Right, so this is what you should have gotten. You can still keep working if you haven't finished, but if you have any questions, if you didn't get this, let me know and I can help you out.
So just to be clear, there's no case where we use the 18,000 units?
Right, the only time you're gonna use that is when you're talking up here about this volume variance. That's the only time you're ever gonna use that 18,000. Is everybody on track with this? Everybody okay with this? Any questions? Are people not done yet? Everybody's done? Okay. So we're gonna wrap up with that for today. I just wanted to remind you, if you have not turned in Chapter 7 homework, please do that by tonight. You also have a Chapter 7 quiz that is due by midnight tonight. I suggest you at least do the practice test before like 5 or 6 tonight, because I mean, I love you, but I'm not going to be up at midnight trying to troubleshoot your technical problems. So at least try that. If it works, then you can take the quiz later tonight. But and then if you have any questions, you can text me or email me or whatever.
Is the practice quiz on Canvas?
It is.
Where is that on Canvas? I only
Okay.
saw the quiz.
So the practice quiz showed up about 30 minutes before class, but let me show you.
It's under the quizzes tab.
Yeah, you can either go to the quizzes tab or you can go to the lockdown. Do you guys have a lockdown tab over here? You can either go there or it's going to show up under the quizzes here, but it's the practice quiz.
Oh,
Doesn't count for anything. I just want you to try it.
thank you.
Can everybody see it? Is everybody okay?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. If you have any technical issues, let me know sooner rather than later today. And I mean, I do check texts more often, but I'll be on email for the majority of the day too. So if there aren't any other questions, that's all I've got. Is that it?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks guys. We'll keep trying this. I'm sorry, I know this is not the same, but at least you don't have to shower before you come. So, all right, take care guys. We'll see ya.
Yeah.
All right, bye.